everyone, it's TB Shores. It is May the 16th, 2020. It's 12:57 p.m. I want to try to get into, hopefully, explaining where you can make sense of what I'm saying about some of the things the Lord has shown me. Clearly, He is connecting many of the things that He has shown in the past. And I'm just scrolling through my videos so you can see, there are, oh my goodness, we have the second Passover connection that we're looking into, which was also given to me in 2015. It is dawn. That's important to some things we're going to touch on. Reformation. We're going to start discussing that, I believe. But there's so many things that he's pulling together, and so much that's just swirling around in my head. So I'm just trusting him to help me put this together in a way that y'all can understand it, because when I try to lay me out a outline or whatever, it's just like, it's overwhelming to me because there is so much stuff. So I'm just going to trust the Lord to pull this together as I try to explain. Now, we had talked about, we see second Passover here. We're in the calendar of May 2020. We see second Passover began here, and it lasts for 2 weeks, which brings us to the end on the 22nd. And we know the Lord had given me that date over by a period of May 22nd. But the Lord had also spoke to me, Jesus and his disciples have 2 weeks. Now, I understood that to be a twofold meaning. Have 2 weeks as in 1, 2, and have 2 weeks as in until Shavuot, because Shavuot actually means weeks. So there's a twofold meaning here, which I think the thing he wants me to understand is there's a spiritual understanding that goes with this 2-week period, and there's a spiritual understanding that goes with the Shavuot. So as I was seeking the Lord and asking him, I was pondering this. Jesus and his disciples have 2 weeks, and it's a 1-2 count, and then a Shavuot, taking us to the Feast of Weeks. And so as I was seeking him on this, he started showing me things about the disciples, because I asked him, I said, Lord, what is it about you and the disciples that is significant about these 2 weeks and Shavuot? And of course, there are things I already knew, but it's like he brought my understanding to fullness, and I'm going to try to convey that now. But when we think about Jesus and the disciples, we have to stop and think about just what was the relationship. Jesus had chosen them, okay? And he took them on a journey, which was teaching them, growing them spiritually, and preparing them for their purpose. And that was all about learning to walk in his ways and to follow him. So as I continued to seek the Lord on this and try to understand the significance of this 2-week period, and Jesus and his disciples, how it applies to them, and Shavuot and Jesus and his disciples, how that applies, the Lord started opening up some things. Now, one of the things that I asked him about was understanding. I knew there had to be something significant about counting the Omer that I had not grasped yet. And clearly he showed me that counting the Omer is about a spiritual journey. And if you look at when Christ was resurrected, the things that involved Jesus after his resurrection and how he interacted with his disciples, clearly that was a spiritual journey because he was bringing them to the fullness of what they would be for him. Okay, so that's where we are. We are where the Lord is bringing us to the fullness of what we will be for him, of the purpose that we will serve for him, because those of us who follow him, we are his disciples today. Okay, let's see. Let me see where to go from here. Okay, as we understand, the counting of the Omer is about a spiritual journey, and he mainly showed me about, and I know there are a lot of things we can connect to this, but the main thing he had me adhere to was the understanding from his resurrection until the ascension, and then from ascension to Shavuot or Pentecost or the Feast of Weeks, whichever you want to call it. Now, certainly, they had been on a spiritual journey from the time that Jesus had called them. They were constantly growing. They were watching the miracles. They were hearing his words, understanding, and he was explaining to them what these words meant from a kingdom point of view. So certainly from the time he chose them all the way up to Shavuot, it was about a spiritual journey and preparing them for their purpose. Okay, so now that we've looked at that part of it, and I'm not going to go into depth on it because he wants things kept fairly straight up, where they're understood without trailing off on a lot of rabbit holes. Okay, so when we understand the counting of the Omer, because the count of the Omer begins on first fruits, and first fruits, we understand the first fruit is the first cut out of the field. Okay, it is representative of what is ready, what is complete. And when Christ became the first fruits, he became the first fruits of the dead. Of course, he brought life and is about light and life and living, but because he was raised from the dead, he was the first fruits of the dead. He was the first that rose up from the dead in the manner that he did. And the significance of that and how it applies to the Lord's disciples today is that we that are following him are the first fruits of the living that he will raise up and give a newness of life, just as he raised up from the grave, from death, and had a newness of life. And when we understand how this applies spiritually and what we need to be gaining from it today, then we start looking deeper into what is going on here, because it wasn't just about Jesus resurrecting and rising from the grave. It was about what he was setting in motion with that. It didn't end there, and there's a whole big story yet to play out. Of course, we look for the return of the Lord. We look for that blessed hope. But he's got a bigger plan that many have yet to realize. And then, of course, there are many of us that do realize. But this is about a spiritual growth, and those who have been on this journey of spiritual growth, Shavuot is about it coming to its fullness. And let me see where I need to get with this. This is almost 10 minutes, so I'm trying. Okay, so what we're going to get into is understanding. Let me see if I can find it right quick. Right here. This right here that the Lord gave me, and I've got my notebook in front of me, on March the 20th, 2019. This word reformation has everything to do with what I'm fixing to explain. because reformation means making changes to something with the intention of setting it back on the right path. And it also means when something is completely changed in order to improve it. So this is about what the Lord is fixing to do and what he did, what we see happening when Jesus was here with his disciples, and what is fixing to take place is all the same. And he showed me some different angles of looking at this. So we're going to pick up on Reformation when I come back with the next video.